Welcome back to the innovation stage, everyone. If you're joining us for the first time today, I'm Sequoia Holmes, host and creator of the award-winning podcast, Black People Love Paramore. Contrary to the title, it is not a podcast about the band Paramore. It's a show about the common and uncommon interests of Black people in order to help us feel a little bit more seen. I also co-host a daily radio show on SiriusXM called The Daily Dirty, and today I am your host for the innovation stage. Now let's get that energy back up for the experience we're about to have. Thank you. We're here with a live session from the Native Lands podcast. On Native Land Pod, Angela Rye, Tiffany Cross, and Andrew Gillum guide us through the political landscape, wielding insights and unapologetic analysis, unraveling the threads that connect Black Americans and marginalized communities to a place they courageously call home. Let's show some love to Native Land.
Welcome home, y'all. Welcome home, y'all. What's up, everybody? Can y'all hear us? Can you hear us? Hopefully. Y'all test your... Oh, no, we can hear.
Y'all can hear us, okay? All right,
yes.
Welcome home.
Welcome home, y'all. I just, one quick housekeeping matter. I believe that our podcast is available everywhere you get your podcast, which includes the Sirius app, but we're actually a part of the iHeart podcast family. So I just wanted to correct the record on that. I'm Angela Rye.
I'm Tiffany Cross.
And I'm Andrew Gillum. Good to meet y'all, and it's good to be with you.
Let me find out Andrew got fans in Texas. I love to see it.
No, that was the culmination applause for the three.
Well,
and as y'all can see, we don't have Bakari Sellers with us, who is our newest fourth host. He is actually wrapping up trial and was trying to get out on time, and government shutdowns can be real effective when you run it late to the airport. So he'll hopefully be on the next flight. And we'll get a chance. But we're extremely proud to have Bakari Sellers from CNN and an attorney in South Carolina join us as the fourth host of the Native Land Pod family.
And he got the nerve to call himself Beyonce. But shout out to Beyonce while we were in Houston. That's Bakari that does that, not Andrew. So I want to just get into a little bit of why we started this show, the importance of it right now in particular. How many of you all have listened to the show? We can see you a little bit. All right. Okay. Well, Tiffany, if you would you please tell us why we named this show Native Land Pod?
This is Angela's idea, so I don't know why I'm answering, but we get this question a lot, and we talk about it on our podcast. But Angela, we are all in a group chat, and Angela said, when we were trying to think of a name, she said, what do you all think about Native Land? And it's because it is the last stanza of our national anthem, the Black national anthem, true to our God, true to our native land. So that's where the name comes from. But it feels more timely, especially now, as no matter how they try to make us feel, this is our home, this is the country we built. So at this time, many of us feel homeless in terms of where we get information from, the spaces where we can gather in safety, where you can have reliable, vetted, trusted information and discussions that reflect the discussions you all are having in your group chats, at brunch tables and book clubs, at the barbershop, wherever you all gather. So that's really the mission of Native Land Pod. And we drop every Thursday, but there are also solo pods, mini pods. Angela hosts her show. Bakari and Andrew are actually recording a show without us. They kicked the girls out. So they're recording a show without us tomorrow. So pretty much every day of the week you can find something from Native Land Pod. And I'm so thrilled that y'all said y'all listen. That warms our heart. We say welcome home for a reason.
Can I also just say on the Native Land selection, we did hear from our indigenous brothers and sisters who wanted to understand the interplay of the use of the word native with their position here as the native peoples of this land. And of course, as Black folks, wherever we've been, either by force or by choice, we've had to figure out maneuver ways to make a place ours. And to adopt it as fully as we can. And so to Tiffany's point about this political moment where you feel homeless on so many fronts, I think ours is a community that has always demonstrated that we can make home, whether again by force or by choice, wherever it is that we are. And so that reference to the stanza is important grounding for why it is native land was our choice. When we say welcome home, because we want you to know that, at least with us, and Bakari when he, with us, I'm joking, that you're at home and that we can be open, free, and fully disclosing with each other.
And speaking of home, I know we are here at AfroTech. This conference has been doing the work of the Lord for many, many years. And I want to shout out the founder of Blavity, Morgan DeBon. Shout out to her for creating this amazing space and her full team. Y'all give it up for them. They're doing really good work.
Yeah.
But I want to stay here for a moment just on home, because there are gatherings like this where Black people come no matter what. It's a head nod, it's a piece, it's a girl, your outfit is fly. And we really need that in this moment in particular, right? I think when we think about home, I didn't even mean to do that. But when we think of it, we've got to remember that we've got to create spaces to belong. And the places that we cultivated, I think particularly around and after the killing of George Floyd, it felt like there was going to be a tide change, that things were going to finally start to shift in corporate. I know many of the corporations here are recruiting, but so many of these organizations have also dialed back some of their efforts. Can we talk about why it's important for Black entrepreneurs with our problem-solving selves to figure out how to meet and bridge that gap, because there is one, and it's growing.
Indeed, and just, that's a perfect question, Angela. I don't want to mention to the audience. We're actually going to, I think, circulate mics, but in a couple of moments, we actually want to bring you into the conversation, because we oftentimes spend a lot of time on our show, of course, telling you what we think, but we want to hear what you think, what your lived experience is saying, and then how do we, as folks who talk a lot on these issues, help to meet the moment through your perspective. And Angela, we have asked a number of corporate folks who are sort of with us and supporting the show, whether or not they have felt pressure within their corporate environments to either lessen the emphasis on diversity, equity and inclusion as one example, or whether or not they felt internally supported and that the mission was not one that was born of a moment that existed and lived only in that moment, but that it's part of the lifeblood of a corporation, an organization. It runs through the bloodstream of it, and not as an appendage. And we're lucky with some of our corporate partners that it does run through the fiber of the organization. But in a lot of other places, it's, y'all know probably better than us, not in vogue to say DEI a lot of times. Or the definition or the attempt to redefine the definition of didn't even earn it is one that, unfortunately, even supporters of diversity have allowed to co-opt its meaning. And the reason why I still sort of lean into the use of the term DEI is that I think we ought to be proud and unapologetic about the fact that corporations, the country, the world does better with a collection of diverse ideas that reflect the diversity of lived experiences that enrich whatever the outcome is, makes it more marketable and profitable, and we all come up, versus the really simplistic, myopic, racist intention that I think comes from the redefinition of it.
I just want to take time and talk to some of the startups here, because I definitely understand the frustration around that. Because even pre-George Floyd, we have had a hard time in raising funds. I, of course, tried to start a newsroom startup and I was met with a very unfriendly, unreceptive environment. I launched at the same time as an outlet, The Skim, which was run by two women who don't look like me. I launched at the same time as Axios, which is a political daily group of newsletters launched by a bunch of men who don't look like me. And I would go into some of these places, like I'm sure many of you all can relate, and I would have to, one, define my humanity, and second, defend it, and then define my intellect, and then second, defend it. People would ask me, someone in half my age would ask me to present the problem. And the problem was, of course, there was not enough reliable information reaching people who look like us. Mind you, this was 2016. And this is a time when the Russian government was interfering with news and information. They spent 30 seconds here and said, oh, I know how we can interfere. They don't treat Black folks so well there. So let's start flooding the zone with that. And people would ask me and pepper me with questions, and the conclusion was constantly, well, Black and brown people don't really care about news. How are you going to prove this business model? Meanwhile, we had unique 100,000 daily readers. The Skim, Axios, they didn't have, they had a concept and launched with 6- and 7-figure jobs, or 6- and 7-figure platforms. And so there was a study done by Rate My Investor, which I'm sure you all may be familiar with, at the lack of opportunity that Black women get in investing. And in 2016, the lack of opportunity that we got cost America, not just us, but America, billions of dollars in commerce and millions of jobs. So as more we're denied, we cut our nose off to spite our face in this country, and we see how that's gone 10 years later, where there's still a dearth of information that does not reach us. And so that's the moment that Native Land tries to meet every week. When we launched, we were the #1 downloaded podcast in every single category across every space on Apple News, and that's because of you all. So it's important that we have your support, but we also want to make sure that we're supporting you, and that's why we want to hear from you as well as we share our own testimony.
And to that point, there is a floating mic, and so if you have a question, please make sure you stand, or a comment, please make sure you stand and say your name and where you're from. I will say quickly, while we're waiting for this first comment, is we also are in a startup space. TIFF definitely blazed the trail, but I want to know, we focus group sometimes, how many of you all run your own company, or you're a startup? There's a few hands. Oh, there's a good number of hands. And then how many of you all are podcasters? Okay, good number of hands too. The reason why I'm asking that is because I think that people don't always understand this is a grind. Like at our big age, we are grinding for real. It is like another startup.
Speaking of big age, somebody just celebrated a big one 2 days ago. Happy birthday, Angela Rye.
Yes, thank you. I turned 46, but I don't look it, praise the Lord, neither do y'all. But do we have a question? I thought somebody...
I was just showing where the mic is.
that a drone?
The mic is
There's
over here
a
to the
drone.
far
There
left.
is
We
a
got a
drone.
hand.
Okay. Hey, y'all. Okay, how you doing?
All right, so good.
That
So
thing is
good.
loud as
So
hell, ain't
good.
it? It's so
We got a
loud.
we got a hand right here.
It needs some new oil. That thing is loud.
It's a distraction.
I got ADD. I can't keep up. Yes, sir. State your name, where you're from.
He's got a podcast.
Indiana's own Dana Black.
Hey, Dana.
Yeah, what's happening?
Dana!
Nicole told me to tell you hi.
Yeah, tell
Sorry
Michael
about
what's
that.
up.
Yes, I am also a podcaster. Tiffany, you owe me a spades game. You know that, right? Okay.
I'm ready. Say the word.
Okay. Now, one of the things I struggle with, I am okay with my podcast because it's just me controlling it. One of the efforts that I have been trying to put together is having a podcast where young people are talking to young people. And everyone talks about they're really interested in doing the thing, but then when I try to pull the meeting together to get the action moving, it's very difficult to get them to sit down for 30 minutes with me to do what is the concept? What are we gonna do? At 55, I can't do the conversation to young people. I need them to do this. How do you manage to bring the ideas together and get them flowing in the right direction?
We fight. We fight. We don't see anything the same, and I think that's one of the big misnomers about the show. There's a huge myth that it's like, oh, they're in an echo chamber. Ain't nobody echoing in here. And so I think the main thing is you have to be willing to come to the table with your thing and say, this is the thing I know we should be talking about. I feel it in my gut. One thing I love about our dynamic is if there's anything that we all, or one person feels strongly about, we yield. But there are also times where we don't yield. Y'all want to talk about any of those times?
Honestly, I think that is a good example, though. We all have a different idea about approaches to the problem. So again, our conversations reflect the same conversations that you guys are having. We all live in service to the liberation of our people, but there are different ideas about how to get there. There are many times that I could reference, but I'll say more generally, I think, Angela, you're in a space where you want to reach everyone. You, even people who I think are sometimes...
Let's just say unreachable.
She's trying to be careful.
I'm trying to be polite because I think sometimes people are nasty in their discord and disrespectful to all of us, but sometimes to Angela. And Angela sets ego aside and will go to that group of people and say, here's what I'm trying to say, and I invite you all to the conversation. I think Andrew, sometimes you're in y'all might see a fight right now, but I think sometimes you're an institutionalist. Like, you believe, like, no, our government functions for this reason, and this is why we have to participate. I think, sometimes I am really focused on informing folks. And so if people don't want to receive that information, I'm like, deuces, I can't force something down your throat if you don't want it. And so if we're all coming at that from a different perspective, hopefully we are reaching everybody, even people who disagree with us. If there are people in the audience right now, it's like, I walk all the time and people are like, I didn't like when you said, or girl, I love when you said, you tell Andrew blah, blah, blah. Or I kind of agree with Angela on this point. I didn't agree with you, or I agree with you. I didn't agree with Angela. And we invite those conversations because a healthy exchange of intellectual ideas and ideology is the only way we are going to see our way out of this 400-year nightmare that we have somehow kept surviving.
Yeah. And then Dana's out of Indiana, and I know the spaces all around this country don't always make themselves warming to new ideas and disruption to media and the market. Your point specifically about young people, I mean, I think not for just young people, I think in general, we're living at a time where people want sort of the unpolished and the not necessarily presentation-ready version of things. They want, how is it? Like, what does it really look like? In fact, the way we negotiate that each week from topic to topic, we have a pre-call with each other. And once each of us are done pitching to each other what we would like to talk about, we oftentimes cut the conversation like, we don't want a pie. Don't say what you really think. Don't do it here. Let's do it when we're on the mic so that folks are truly welcomed into what the discourse is between why a thing or why not a thing.
Andrew, we just got in trouble. We got to shorten our responses.
I'm done.
It's a lot of questions.
That's it.
Okay.
More
I have
authenticity.
a lot of questions.
I have a question.
What is it?
I'm right here in the middle.
Hey, friend.
I'm Tiffany. I'm Tiffany Harris here from Houston. So my question for you all is, I'm a mom and I have a great community of children, none of which who like Trump. But I want to help them frame the conversation in a way where they're not distrustful and disliking of all the things. Like, I want them informed. So how, and you guys all have three very different perspectives, but what's the best way to help young people frame the moment that we're in to help empower them in a more proactive way, as opposed to a more reactive or hate or anything else that's happening? I want to empower them to feel like, yes, this is a bad moment, but it's not the end of the moment.
One of the things that I point to, and I will even give you this example right now, for 24 additional states, SNAP benefits are expected to run out on November 1st, right before the holidays. And one of the things that I'm so grateful I shifted inadvertently my algorithm to see are the number of ways in which Black folks are coming together to meet the needs of hungry kids and families all over this country. So one thing that we know is that when we all just do a little bit, we can change the equation. We can absolutely change the way this is played. Should we be able to rely on our government after everything that we've given to our government? Absolutely. But can we rely on our government is something entirely different. And I think that if we accept what we don't want to, which is that if we may not be able to, but we have everything we need, and God, we thank you, we can make it. So the short answer is, we all we got. Andrew?
Agreed, and I'll just say the beauty of history is that oftentimes it tells a story of what we've overcome. When we think about the Montgomery bus boycott, they didn't start with the intention of being in protest for over a year. They started believing they were going to protest for a day. And then they met that evening and decided they were going to keep the protest for the next day. And they met again that evening and decided they were going to keep the protest going until they broke the wheel of the system. So history is important, particularly for young folks, in that, yeah, this may be the moment we're in right now, but it hasn't always been this way, and it doesn't always have to be this way. And I think we ought to lean more on the examples that I think show a path that we can overcome, and we do overcome.
Next
Little
question.
question.
Hi, Carla.
Hi, my name is Carla Wilmaris, and this is a podcast, so congratulations to you guys. My question is, I have a company, it's a production company for podcasting since 2017, and I've always focused only on Black and brown voices to amplify them. When I came into space, it was a very white space, it still is. So my question to you is, a lot of people come into the space, it's demanding. Podcasting is fun. You're looking at it, you're enjoying native land multiple times a week, but then I see everyone putting their hands up. They want to do it or they're in it, but you get tired and you get burnt out. And if you have co-hosts, there could be, discourse between you guys. So can you guys say how you manage to show up on a weekly basis? Because this is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and it takes time to grow your audience when you're not already a celebrity, but you're needed in the space.
I just want to say Carla Wilmaris was my executive producer for another podcast I hosted with Will Packer. So she has an amazing podcast company and was great to work with. And I haven't seen her since, so I'll hug you after the discussion. But thank you for the question. I think with all of us, one rule for me anyway, when we're in person, even if there was a fight or discord on the panel, I want to eat afterwards. I want us all to be able to go out to eat like we're gonna do when we get off this stage and break bread and have a good time. And I think keeping the disagreement on the podcast. I don't want to talk after about the disagreement. Like if you got a problem with something I said, say it on the podcast. That is content. The other thing that you really can't manufacture is we are friends organically. Our friendship precedes the podcast, and it won't change. The podcast will not change our friendship. 10 years from now, you can ask me, what's going on with Angela? What's going on with Andrew? I'm going to be able to answer. So we're having conversations, and we're letting the audience eavesdrop on those conversations. We show up as our authentic selves. We're not performing for this. Whether the cameras are rolling there or not, these conversations was going to be happening.
We also take breaks from each other.
Yeah, we typically
Like right
only
after the
talk
show,
on
we
Andrew
recording.
takes the longest breaks from us, and it gets on my nerves. That's a podcast fight I'm gonna have right here. Gets on my nerves. Answer my calls.
Angela wants to talk about everything all the way through. And sometimes it's like, I heard what you said. I'm done with it. And we'll pick up the next day. And
nerves.
that dynamic is real because I remember as a youth, like watching groups that used to be great performance groups. And then you look up the next day and they done broke up. And nobody knows why the group broke up because nobody ever talked about the fact that there's discord, but it never, when our discourse gets to the point where I no longer trust their intention, any one of them, or that at the end of the day they don't have in mind or in heart, like me coming out good on the other side, then that's where it starts to disrupt for me. But in our disagreements, personal, on the show, otherwise, generally it's about a thing, this moment, this incident, this thing, and not like I'm not questioning the integrity of your character. I don't disbelieve you, so on and so forth.
Hi, my name is Andrea. I'm based here in Houston, and my company is Black Sports Moms. I have an amazing co-founder that lives in Atlanta. So piggybacking on her question, we want to start a podcast. Logistically, you guys all have 11 jobs. How do you manage it? Because we want to do it in person. Do you guys do marathon shoot days? Do you do some virtual where y'all both on screen? Because we want to start it, but we want to get the best engagement. With me being in Houston, her being in Atlanta.
I really want to tell you that I wish that you would watch our show. It's so clear you don't, but I'm not going to say that. So what I will say is...
She's so shady sometimes.
No, it's not, but it's the
just
truth.
walk through
It's
the
not
front
how you
door.
go. We just recorded 102 episodes. We do both. Tiff says she likes to be in person. We're in person right now. We do live shows. It just really depends. If you all have the travel budget to be in person, be in person. We don't do marathon shoot days because it's news sensitive. It's a political and cultural show. And I will just say it is a marathon, as Carla said, as Tiff just alluded to. So that's it. I don't think.
Agreed.
Thank you for the question, though, and we hope you tune in. You're welcome home.
Ditto.
That's some Tiff filter on there. But I'm just saying, don't ask me no questions. Go back and look, y'all.
As we were moving on, how about to the outer skirts? There's some hands over here on the outer skirts. Ready?
She was like, move along.
Right? Anybody got a mic?
Hi.
We got-
Can you hear me? Hi. My name is Marcel Anderson. I'm a founder.
Where are you? Oh, I see it. Back
Yeah.
here, guys.
Thank you. I'm a founder CEO of an AI tech company based in Miami. So my question is actually for Andrew, especially given that you guys are in the podcasting space now, and as we reflect upon Kamala's race and how the allocation of resources with respect to reaching the people was, I would say, misallocated with respect to TV ads and billboards, and we saw how Trump was able to effectively use shows like Joe Rogan's podcast, et cetera. As you think about the importance of going local and the importance of targeting communities for galvanizing folks to win back states like Florida. What do you think of as effective strategies or people that you're throwing your weight behind to make sure we can try to win back Florida, given how powerful the governor's seat is?
Yeah, well, salute, brother. I'm from Miami. I was born there, and Florida, a lot of people across the country declare us pretty much a lost state as it relates to our politics. I tend to agree with you. I think it is a state that can be won if we're willing to compete. And competition has to be more than words. It's got to be matched in a budget, right? You mentioned, the Harris campaign and the appropriation of media buys. And the truth is, it's not just the Harris campaign. Nearly any Democratic campaign run nationally, almost anywhere, has leaned into this very lateral sort of non-innovative approach to engaging communities. They might do an appearance on a podcast, but then you go back and trace the ad dollars, and all the money went to network television, right? We're not even a percentage. We're less than a decimal point of what they were spending to reach our communities. And my frustrations are pretty big high with institutional structures that are supposed to serve and protect the things that I believe in, and hopefully you believe in. And much of that has to do with the capitulation, the fact that so many folks have been willing to bend a knee, so willing to silence themselves and to absent themselves from a healthy discourse, that all we got is us. We're out here, talking to each other, hopefully not exclusively, but about, okay, the system seems to be collapsing at every turn. Who's telling the truth about it? And I think increasingly, viewers, listeners are finding those voices and connecting to them. But if you own a budget line, if you're over a budget line around advertising, I hope you'll make the point that you can't do this like it's a one-off transaction. If you're going to talk to communities, especially communities of color, where you can move votes and numbers, you need to be there not to date me once, but you gotta marry me. You gotta be in relationship with me on a regular basis, good times, bad times, and otherwise. So you know when the community's in pain and when we're feeling optimistic and prosperous. And then, again, lift those voices up as they show themselves. But ideally, we'd be in a much better place. Where we are right now is we kind of all we got at the moment, and hopefully that picture turns soon.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Keisha, and this question is for you, Tiffany. I used to watch your show every Sunday, my husband and I, so we really loved your show. So your show gave a powerful platform to underrepresented voices, and after it ended, how did you reimagine your mission to be able to amplify those same voices outside of traditional network spaces?
Thank you. I'm still reimagining. It's funny you should ask that question right now, because literally right now I'm trying to harness resources to revisit that platform. I'm so grateful for so many people who tuned in, who still tell me they tuned in. And I say this with all humility, because I don't think that people tuned in necessarily just to hear from me, but they tuned in to hear from indigenous voices who did not have to talk about the indigenous community to be invited to my show. You could be a person to talk about Supreme Court justices, but you happen to have a Native American background. You could be from the API community and come on my show and talk about political discourse. So I've really been trying to figure out how to harness the rising majority and bring that back. I try to do that on Native land, but this is, an opinion podcast, and I do miss actual reporting and journalism and introducing, so I try to do that as much as I can on the show, but I am looking for another outlet where I could actually report. So stay tuned is what I can say for now, and just thank you for blessing me with the question. I'm gonna take this moment, because you asked that question, to just shout out somebody in the audience somebody who I met through reporting on ground in Tulsa, and that is Demario Solomon Simmons. Please stand up, Demario. Demario is the attorney for the surviving members of the Tulsa Massacre. He represents the Tulsa Massacre. And he just won another case. As we talk about indigenous people, we have to know that there are Black indigenous people who are part of Creek Nation. Yes, and so he also just won that case. And for anyone in the audience who cares, I know he would want me to say this. He is a proud member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So I'm saying that because I know he would want me to say that.
Demario, you got to write her a check now, child. We love you, brother. I know we have a few more questions right here. Yes.
How y'all doing? My name is Carrie Gray. I'm the founder and executive director of the Named Advocates. Our work is at the intersections of racial and disability justice. Just a small plug, I would love to hear y'all talk about disability justice more. But my question is, I'm really curious of how y'all see the future of the DEIA framework. Right now, we are pushing for people to still use DEIA, but the reality is our community is fractured. People are dropping it, they're losing money. Some people couldn't wait to get away from it. I'm curious if y'all see this as a time to genuinely stick with it, or are y'all imagining the future of what we could be doing around this work? And is it called DEIA or something different?
I think that we have to detach ourselves from terms and attach ourselves to outcomes. We spend a lot of time worried about what something is called, and I think whether you call it belonging, we go together, justice, affirmative action, just action, it's about damn time, whatever you call the program, right? We just need to make sure that the outcomes are attached to our collective liberation. I appreciate you adding in and stating it here, DEIA. I will be more mindful of utilizing that. But one thing that I love that we've done from our very first show, Andrew talked about Native Land Pod being a safe space for us virtually to convene because we are so disparate in where we live now. We don't live next door to each other like our folks used to do back in the day. So please, when you see us not mentioning something, send in a video, let us know. And that goes for all of you. If there's something we need to speak to, if you don't like something we said, we've been in a lot of beef since Bakari got on the show. So if there's anything, you want to share, by all means, you can send in a comment or a question. We'd love to hear from y'all. It's your home too, so that's why we say welcome home, y'all. Yes.
Agreed to it matters what the outcomes are, but it also matters that a thing be called a thing, largely because we didn't know about how reckless a lot of companies were in their spending toward people of color, or how many employees with disabilities or different abilities they had. We didn't learn that stuff until we started requiring, largely through government, that they counted. And I was always told you count what matters, and you call a thing something when it matters. And largely I found in a lot of places where they don't name when they are making diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEIA investments, then everybody gets called to the C-suites and they're scattering, trying to figure out how they can composite some data together that makes them not look like they're keeping certain communities outside of the benefit here. So to me, it matters that you call a thing something, because when you call it something, you usually count
Andrew,
it.
we in a fight, because here's the thing. There are a lot of places that call a thing, and the only beneficiaries are white women.
That's why I agree with you. The outcomes. The outcomes also matter.
Yeah.
But right now, you wanted to go to France and find out how many folks are owning black businesses, say there. In France, they don't, your identity as a Frenchman, French woman is just that. There's no black French, there's no Afro French, there's no any of that. And they take it as a state of pride that they don't have those divisions. And I said, well, how do you find the data when you're trying to find it?
So let me push back on this too, because even recently, we had the essential dismantling of the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program through DOT, through the Department of Transportation. Disadvantaged Business Enterprise stands, but they have gutted it of gender and racial consideration. So you called the thing a thing, but it's not going to have the same impact.
Well, this is a Lioness administration, and so it's hard to really sort of figure out what's what. But I will say this, to bridge the divide here is, I think the outcomes absolutely matter, right? The outcomes of a thing absolutely matter. To call it something also matters to me, but in a perfect scenario would be that it lives in the bloodstream of the entity. That if diversity is important to you, no, I'm not calling out, but you can see in my C-suite and my F-suite and whatever suites you have, that it means something, because based off the diversity that you can either visibly see or once you get into the data, see on paper.
Producer Lolo is right there, and she says we have to wrap this answer. So next question.
How you doing, Tiffany? My name is Adam Harris. I'm a creative director at Proud Kids Club. And my wife's been on your show multiple times before you got canceled. Her name is Lynn Wynn.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and my daughter.
Yes, y'all
yeah.
baby girl. I remember her.
Yeah.
So Lynn, she a woman of Asian American woman who I used to have on the show. She had so much flavor and I always had she gave it to a straight no chaser every time. So thank you. Please tell her I said hi. Sorry, y'all. It's a reunion.
Compare pictures afterwards. Sure.
Yeah, we'll take pictures. But my question is, let me see how I can word this. How are we gonna teach our elders how to tell difference from AI videos and real videos? How are we gonna bridge the gap in between that? And, you know, cause my mom's sending me like 4 to 5 videos a day. Look at this deer, you know, jumping on a trampoline, and then celebrities selling fake products. Like, how do we bridge that gap?
We bridge it first with us, because I'd be seeing something thinking it's real.
Well,
I am closer to 60 than I am to 40, so.
So I've talked about AI a lot and the dangers of it that it represents specifically for us. I think sometimes people get so excited with it, like it's a new toy, without attaching to it critical thinking and what it means for our community. We know in this room, AI is neither artificial nor is it intelligent. It's feeding off what we give it. But when you look at the internet comment section, think about it. AI is all up and through there, grasping information from that. The best example that I can give that's been written about multiple times, you ask AI, ChatGPT for example, does Israel have the right to exist? You get back a immediate yes. You ask AI, does Palestine have the right to exist? The answer is way different. Well, it's complicated. Well, we have to look at this. That shows bias right there. Now, that's Israel and Palestine, a very complex Middle East policy. Think about when it comes to black folks here in America and what kind of information that people are using and building. Moreover, AI is the thing that's doing the learning, not us. So when you think about how it's pumped into our newsrooms, into our social media feeds, it is terrifying. To answer your question, I do not believe we will be able to get ahead of this before it gets ahead of us. Even with Sora and the new technology there, it's already being manipulated by other people. All it is a video clip. You could just edit the Sora out of the video, and it's already happening. More dangerously, think about what it's doing to our politics. Just this month, we saw Donald Trump use an AI video to show himself defecating on the No Kings parades across the country, wearing a crown, which happens to be a queen's crown. It wasn't even a king's crown, genius. But he showed this video, and people believed that. During the election, they showed a video of Joe Biden and spliced it to look like he was falling asleep during an interview. That never happened. But critical thinking people see this and believe it. So I would ask all of us, share responsibly, think critically before you comment on something, thinking it's real. You can always double and triple check before you share something like that. But it's something that I'm terrified. And I ask people in here who works on AI, my question to you is, are we looking at more sci-fi or more horror story? And right now, it feels like more horror story.
And to that end, sadly, it's horrific that we are going to have to come to a close, but first we're going to do calls to action. We don't. We have calls to action, so whoever wants to start. Okay, I won't hold you. Here we go. My call to action first is to please make sure that you are talking to people who you don't always agree with. Make sure you're listening to things, watching things, reviewing things that you don't necessarily understand. I think, Tiff, what you were just saying about AI is a perfect case in point. I am trying to learn how to use this thing so this thing don't use me. You understand? So my call to action would be to please make sure, even while you're here, get to know somebody in your black family. Tell them how you're doing. Wait and listen to the answer, and definitely make sure you connect with folks you don't agree with.
My call to action is if you had a question or comment that we did not get to, please drop us a video. They will tell you, I'm so intentional every week. I yield my time. Sometimes I'll say, I don't have a topic. I'd rather us use this time just to hear from our viewers. If you're new to the platform, we welcome you home to tune in. And please feel welcome in this space. And yeah, please, if you had a question for any of us or a topic, I'd love the suggestion that we speak more about disability. We had another person ask that same question last year on the campaign trail. So anything, there's literally nothing you can say that we don't play on the show. We want you to feel at home. So if you had your hand up and we didn't get you, please, you can, how they get it to us, Lolo? They can DM it to our Instagram at Native Land Pod, and can they email it anywhere? I'll give y'all, I'll tweet out Angela's cell phone number, and y'all can just text it to her directly and get us video.
And be your own people. Andrew?
It's fashionable to not do politics these days. It's dirty. It ends you up in conflict and fights and in conversations you don't think you're fully qualified to have. But politics, by definition, is just a study of people. And as just in this conversation, I had so many sort of policy-related responses I'd like to offer. But the truth is I often hedge it because people like to stay away from the political. And I would just say, as Joy Reid says, politics is doing us every day. Whether it's how we get our parents to understand what an artificial video is versus what's real, or how we get a regulatory environment around artificial intelligence that keeps the American people at the center of it and not profit, or how it is you curate in your own community conversations that are relatable to the people who live there versus what they're being fed. Politics is all up, through, beneath, under, intertwined with all of it. And so I wish we could redefine how it is we think about politics as a season and an election, and really consider it as it's every day, it's all the time, 24/7. Those decisions are the ones at the beginning and the end of the day that are affecting your life and your livelihood, your ability to survive versus your ability to thrive. Tune in.
Andrew Gillum, Tiffany Cross, and I'm Angela Rye. We're Native Land Pod. Y'all welcome home.
Let's give a huge round of applause to the Native Land Pod. Thank you for that authentic and powerful dialogue. As we set up tech for our next session, I wanted to take some time to talk about magic. Do we have our mic runner? Do we have our mic runner? Mic runner? Mic runner? Okay, well, we're gonna do it without one then. We've been talking about building what's next all week, so I want you to tell me, what kind of magic are you building? Is it an app, a company, a community, a legacy? If anybody wants to speak about what they're building, raise your hand and speak up. Yes, I'll repeat what you're saying. Oh, we got the mic runner.
Hi. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bolametien Akinlaja. You can call me BB. So, I work at the Center for Data Analytics at Bowie State University, and I have a club named the Data Tribe. The Data Tribe basically is a community of students coming together to learn everything data. It's open to all students, data, AI, machine learning, data science, you name it. So it's basically a safe space for students to say, hey, I don't know what data is. I'm like, don't worry, I got you. So basically put you through from knowing what data is to getting a job and actually being a successful person. So yeah.
That sounds very cool. Love that. Thank you for that. Does anybody else want to speak? Let's go to this person here. Yep.
Hello, I'm Janasia Dunmore, and I'm building a community called The Nerd Next Door, where I talk about AI and make it in a less technical way, because I know we're all in STEM, we understand the big words, but it can be really intimidating to those that don't really understand technology. So really taking those big words and making them digestible, so we're not as afraid of AI and more of an obstacle that we can take on head on, so that it doesn't work us and we're working it.
Come on, work it. We have time for one more. Let's go over there.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I'm Brandy, co-founder of Symbios AI. What we're building is a comprehensive and culturally responsive AI clinical assistant for therapists that surfaces actionable insights to help them track trends, help them grow their clinical practice, help them with their training, and also improve clinical outcomes by reducing misdiagnosis and rejected claims. So, thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for that, y'all. All of that is extremely magical. Now we're stepping behind the magic. Our next speaker, Andrew Roberts, is an Oscar-nominated visual effects supervisor at Industrial Light and Magic, where he brings over 25 years of experience turning bold creative visions into cinematic reality. His recent work includes major projects like Jurassic World, Rebirth, Res Ball, and Joker Folie à Deux. Now serving as governor of the Film Academy's Visual Effects branch, he champions innovation and global collaboration in the VFX industry. Please welcome Andrew Roberts.
Hello, AfroTech. I have to say it's an honor to be here at this celebration of Black excellence and innovation. ILM's story, much like AfroTech, is one of creativity and innovation. This is a company who since 1975 has been creating worlds and characters that filmmakers and audiences could only previously imagine and dream of. So how have these artists been able to bring so many groundbreaking moments to audiences for 50 years? Well, we'll talk about some of the key core values to the company's success. But first, let's take a look at some of the work that ILM has done in film and television.
Monsters are more than just horrid looks and claws and teeth.
Are those lightsabers? Are you a Jedi?
That's truly impressive work from artists from our global community, where every single frame that you saw was touched by the hands of dozens of artists. Well, how did I get to join this world-class team? Let me take you back to my roots. My family's from the Caribbean. My father's from Carriacou, which is an island next to Grenada, and Mum's from Barbados. And in the 1950s, they were part of what's known as the Windrush generation, those teenagers who sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to look for a better future for themselves and their families. That journey from small islands to an unknown future really shaped the way that I see the future and see the world, full of possibilities. My parents met in London, settled down, and had me and my 3 siblings. I'm there in the red tie and pants, happy to be there with that middle child energy. And I was raised in a loving environment of music, creativity. Dad was a carpenter and a musician, and Mum really loved art. And so that was just a wonderful, wholesome environment, lots of family trips together. And I had the privilege of seeing Dad make things, design and create things, and hearing his music, seeing Mum's love for all kinds of art. It really influenced the path that I'd eventually take. Well, my career journey, like many of yours, I went through many different jobs. And as you know, careers are really straight lines, but they are journeys of growth. And as I went through each of these steps, sometimes creative and others more technical, I was really unsure of where I was going or what that future might be. But one core value that Mum and Dad shared with me that stuck with me is taken from this scripture in Corinthians 3:23, which conveys this idea of just putting all of your energy into what you're doing at this point. And so for me, that meant being a sponge, learning as much as I could, being enthusiastic, not assuming that I was owed a promotion just because I felt like it, but that I actually earned it. And at times when, in reflection, where I felt like perhaps I was stuck, it turned out that I was acquiring the skills and I was being prepared for what was next. Every step added skills that served me today in my role as a visual effects supervisor. Well, what is a visual effects supervisor? What do they do? There's 3 main areas that are a responsibility. First of all, a VFX supervisor is responsible for the look and development of all the visual effects in a film. Sometimes we may have hundreds of artists working on a film, and it's my role to ensure that they all convey a single thought and that it all looks consistent. A VFX soup is also a problem solver. That would be on set if now there's weather or we can't get access to a location, or perhaps a little later in the process if the director now doesn't like what they see and we have to find a solution to those problems. And throughout, we're also a creative partner. The director wants to feel like they have someone who has their best interests at heart and is going to really guide the visual effects to then convey the story and support the story. We all want to deliver great work that really is just going to help bring that film or that television show to the next level. Well, for most creative projects, you know that there are 3 stages: pre-production, production, and post. And each stage, of course, is crucial to the success of that project. Sometimes we talk about visual effects as being post-work. You might be surprised to know that visual effects is involved at each of the stages. I really love this quote that fellow ILM soup Fraser Churchill uses, where he uses this analogy of a meal, where in prep you write the recipe, in production you're gathering the ingredients, and it's in post that you cook the meal. But visual effects is needed at each step, and clearly you can't skip any of them. So what would that mean for me as a VFX soup? Well, during prep, I'm going to understand a director's vision. I'm going to go and watch his previous films. I'm going to read the script multiple times so that I can understand the characters and what my role might be, for this film. I'm going to plan an approach. So I may read a line in a script that says she was chased by a dinosaur. And then I'm going to figure out, okay, the dinosaur's probably going to be CG. Does my character need to be computer generated also? So we're going to figure out where visual effects is going to help to support and make that line actually come up on the screen. We'll make decisions and make sure that the filmmakers agree with the approach that we're going to take, and perhaps there might even be some tests that we need to do to ensure that this will actually work the way that we're hoping. Now, during production, I'm going to execute those plans and ensure that all the things that we agreed on actually gets followed through on. We're going to respond to changes, as we mentioned. Maybe we're supposed to go outdoors and it's raining that day, and so we need to work together to find some solutions to those issues. And also, I'm really focused on the integrity of each shot. I want to make sure that as a whole, if I need a green screen behind a character, if I need to take certain measurements, that's for the best interest of the project, and that's what we really, really need to do. And then also I'm going to gather data for my artists back at the studio, maybe taking physical measurements, light measurements, so that they're going to be able to do the best possible job. And then when we get to the post-production stage, that's when I'm conveying all the things I learned from pre-production, from the script, and from all my experiences on set, and passing that on to the team so that they're really able to do excellent work and deliver shots that the director's happy with. Well, ILM has a history that's filled with cinematic breakthroughs. Star Wars wouldn't have been possible without the Dijkstraflex, the motion-controlled camera, where a computer then could repeat this move and then integrate effects into film. For Jurassic Park, that brought the first realistic computer-generated creatures to the screen. The Mandalorian brought real-time virtual production. And with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, we bring a hybrid of artificial intelligence and computer graphics to the screen. Each of these innovations helped push filmmaking forward for the whole filmmaking community. Well, we spoke about some of the core values behind ILM's success, and I'll share those with you. The first is that we are all filmmakers. Whether you're in a production role or creative or technical, you all have a perspective or input that just might be valuable and that might be the answer we need to a creative problem that we're dealing with. Innovation thrives on diversity and curiosity. We want people who are interested in what we're doing and are going to share their opinions. And collaboration really is at the heart of what we do. We share knowledge openly, and we really encourage that empathy and that curiosity within all of our employees. And people over pipeline. We'll never force people to work in a certain way, and if you as an artist have an idea or a tool that you think will really help us to do the best possible work and put it up on the screen, then we will adapt. So every film, the way that that is set up is different because we're accommodating people over the pipeline. These are the real secrets behind those 50 years of innovation and success that ILM has had. And that innovation has always been artist-driven. So when we think about for Jurassic Park, there was this device called the dinosaur input device, which allowed stop-motion animators to influence the motion for those computer-generated characters. The LED screen was the vision of the filmmaker, Jon Favreau, that he had this idea that you could capture imagery from anywhere in the world and bring it to the controlled environment of a soundstage to illuminate your characters and for it to look like they're really there. And for The Mandalorian, we blended computer graphics with AI, with the artist's hand guiding that work. The core message I'd like to share with you here is that new tools empower artists. They never replace creativity. It's always the humans behind it. Well, this clip I'm going to share with you now, in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Harrison Ford plays a younger version of Indy. With the latest AI tools and with Harrison's permission, our artists guide our generative tools on past Indiana Jones performances, so from the previous 4 films. So on set, he's unencumbered, he's free. He doesn't have any motion capture suit that he has to put on. All of his performance is observed by these 2 cameras, which watch his performance. So we're able to combine generative AI tools with best-in-class computer graphics, which brings this high-fidelity performance for the first 20 minutes of the film. ILM thrives on diverse perspectives. Different voices solve fresh problems in unique ways. AfroTech reflects that same belief. Innovation flourishes when talent from different backgrounds comes together. Our industries, film and technology, they both rely on that exchange of ideas. Our creativity is stronger when our perspectives are wider. And certainly ILM's proud of its 50-year history. but it really is the future that excites us most. New tools, new worlds, new stories are all waiting to be built. Storytelling will always require creativity, vision, and most importantly, human connection. The next breakthroughs will come from people in rooms just like this. The next 50 years starts with the imagination in this hall. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, though. You can, yeah, exactly. Great job. What an incredible glimpse into cinematic innovation. Now we're turning to a topic that affects every one of us, mental health and leadership in the digital era. Dr. Anthony Estreet is CEO of the National Association of Social Workers and a national leader in behavioral health, workforce development, and social work innovation. With over 20 years of experience, he drives policy and practices focused on mental health and racial equity. Dr. Arthur C. Evans Jr. is CEO of the American Psychological Association, leading efforts to advance psychological science and practice to improve lives. A clinical and community psychologist, he brings a career-long focus on applying psychological knowledge to address real-world challenges. Dan Gillison is CEO of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, bringing over 30 years of leadership experience and a personal commitment to mental health advocacy. He serves on several national advisory boards, helping shape policies that support individuals and families affected by mental illness. Please welcome Anthony Estreet, Arthur Evans, and Daniel Gillison for Empowering Minds, Empowering Futures.
Hello, 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 everybody. So this is going to be an interesting conversation about technology, mental health, and the next generation of leadership, and really thinking about how do we bridge that gap between mental health and how people integrate with technology. And so I want to give us a little time to talk about our organizations. So I'm Dr. Anthony Estreet. I'm the CEO of the National Association of Social Workers, which is the largest social work, professional social work organization in the world. And we represent social workers across the US and a lot of different sectors. Arthur?
Dr. Arthur Evans, I'm the CEO for the American Psychological Association. We have 173,000 members who are students and academics and practitioners, and I'm very glad to be here.
Yeah, good afternoon. Dan Gillison, the CEO of NAMI. I always like to say that leading NAMI as a father and as an uncle and as a son more than as a CEO. We are the largest grassroots mental health organization in the U.S. In over 650 communities, including states from Hawaii to Alaska, providing support and courses that are free for anyone in the community.
Thank you. And so I want to give a huge shout out to AfroTech because they are doing more to bridge that gap between technology and mental health. And so to start the conversation, I really want to ask you, when we talk about innovation in the future of technology, how often are we also thinking about the mental health of the people building, using, and impacted by these tools?
Okay, my friend, okay. So I don't think we think about it enough. And I should say that, you know, the American Psychological Association, we are a membership organization of scientists and practitioners, and probably about half of the people in the US who get a PhD in psychology are not clinicians, they're scientists. They study organizations, they study human behavior in organizations or in communities, they study how we think and learn. And the issue around how do we inject that science into the development of AI is really critical. For example, one of the things that we know is that many of the technologies that are out there, whether we're talking about AI or other technologies, have inherent bias. They have the same biases that we have in society. We have those reflected in the technology. Well, there are a whole group of scientists, social scientists, who study things like bias and how to mitigate bias. And that knowledge needs to be brought into our development of AI. So to answer your question, I don't think we do enough to think about the human element, whether it's the mental health aspects or the other psychological aspects of mental health or the other psychological aspects into the development of these technologies, both from the standpoint of the people who are developing these technologies and the stresses that they are under, as well as the people who are on the end use.
Yeah, I'd like to build on that, to look at the industry sector and look at technology. And, you know, many of you all probably know the language first to market. And as you think about being first to market, you sometimes exclude versus include. And what we're looking for is inclusion versus that exclusion. And what I mean by that is first to market in this competitive space, and you see all the dollars that are in AI. You see many organizations running fast and hard to develop their app, their tool. How often are they considering the mental health aspect? How often are they bringing people with lived experience, which is NAMI, to the table in terms of being those researchers and those voices that are helping them as they develop the tools? So that is a concern, and it's something that we often ask the questions because it's very important, and I think that's a part of what this trio is doing.
And so I want to take a step back, right? Because I want to make sure that we also level set. When we talk about mental health and the continuum of mental health, can you explain to the group what that means? Because a lot of times when people hear mental health, they typically think about serious mental illness where you have to go to the hospital and you need some type of intervention at that moment. So when we talk about mental health along the continuum, can you explain that and characterize that for us?
I think that's a really good question. So here's the thing. Most people think about mental health as a group of people who have a mental health diagnosis. But the reality is that mental health is really on a continuum. At one end of the continuum are people who have very serious mental health challenges. Maybe they have depression or anxiety or maybe even schizophrenia at the very far end of the continuum. At the other end of the continuum are people who have optimal mental health. Not just they don't have a mental health diagnosis, but they really have a really strong mental health, and all of us are somewhere on that continuum. Every person in this room is somewhere on that continuum. And over the course of our lives, we move up and down that continuum. Sometimes we move to the point where we need professional help. And that's about 25% of the population. So 25% of us in this room are probably experiencing some kind of mental health challenge that requires us to use mental health professionals. So it could be you have an anxiety disorder, or maybe you're depressed, maybe you've gone through something recently in your life that is leading you to have depression. It could be any number of things. But many of us, and most of us, the majority of us, are somewhere who haven't crossed that continuum. The way I like to visualize it is if you took a pyramid, about the top 25% of that pyramid would be the people who have a diagnosis. And the middle part of that pyramid would be people who don't have a diagnosis, but they're struggling. You know, they're having challenges. And then the bottom part of that pyramid is people who are healthy. Why is it important to think about it that way? Because when you're at the top part of that pyramid and you need help, the way our healthcare system works is that if you have a diagnosis, we help you. But if you're not in that top 25%, there are no services, there are no resources. But we know that many people can benefit from some kind of intervention. We saw this really clearly during the pandemic. Many of us saw people who were either first responders or people who had to go to work who were really struggling. They didn't have a mental health diagnosis, but they were under a tremendous amount of stress. People at home, people who were disconnected from their natural social social networks, also struggling. So the question for us is, how do we not only think about people at the top part of the pyramid who have very diagnosable conditions, but how do we help those of us who are somewhere in the middle? And then for the bottom part of the pyramid, how do we make sure that people stay there? That's really important because we actually do this in physical health. We talk about diet, exercise. Why do we talk about that? Because we know that those things will keep us physically healthy. There are things that will keep us psychologically healthy. And one of the things that we're trying to do, and all of us in our respective organizations, is to make sure that our approach to mental health is not just about treating illness, which we have to do, and we've always done that, but we got to get upstream and prevent people from getting to that point where they need professional help, where we're all doing the things that we can do to stay psychologically healthy.
Yeah. And building on the last thing that Dr. Evans said about going upstream, one of the things that NAMI has done is, in doing that, is looking at our youth and young adults. And in terms of that body of work, we've created something called NAMI Next Gen, and it's a cohort of 10 young adults that work with us every year to help form and frame our work going forward. The other thing is that we know young adults, like many of you in the room, say, we hear what you say, but we watch what you do. So we wanted to make sure that we were very intentional in getting young adults working with us and talking about their mental health. But we wanted to take it all the way through all of our work. So the other thing that we've done is made sure that we amended our bylaws so that we have 2 young adults that are on our national board to form and frame our work going forward, because our young adults will tell us, and one of our mantras is nothing about us without us, and wanting to make sure that people don't feel alone. So we've done that. The other thing is that Dr. David Satcher coined a phrase years ago that the World Health Organization uses. There is no physical health without mental health. What's interesting, all of us will talk about everything from the shoulders down, but many of us won't talk about anything from the neck up. And that's what we're trying to make sure that we're doing. And what we're seeing is that young people, the 18 to 30, are much more interested in being upfront and talking about it. And I would like to thank all of you all that do that, because it is changing the conversation, it is changing the dynamic, and it is going to make for a better outcome.
And so I think from the social work perspective, we are the largest provider of behavioral services in the U.S. currently. And what that means is that, social work gets a bad rap. We are typically seen as individuals that take kids, but the reality is, even though we have our humble beginnings in child welfare, we do provide a lot of the behavioral services in the United States currently, right? And so 9 out of 10 times, if you've not met a social worker in your life, you're going to meet a social worker. And so what does that mean for us? It means that as we think about wellness, as we think about prevention, as we think about therapy and interventions, 9 out of 10 times it's going to be delivered by a social worker. And so when we think about mental health, it is along that continuum that Dr. Evans talked about, and really, how do we address that? And as somebody who has, started therapy on my own, there was nothing wrong. I was just stressed out, right? And so my therapist has a great relationship. I keep them on speed dial, and really, we talk all the time just about regular, everyday things. And so the more that we're having this conversation about mental health and reducing the stigma, the more that we give opportunity and voice to people to engage in this process. And so how does this all relate to technology? And so the next question I have for you all are, how are AI, digital platforms, and virtual tools currently being used in mental health care?
Before we go to that question and the answer to that question, can I do something real quick?
Sure.
We want to make this an executive conversation, and so pleased to be with these 2 leaders right here. But in doing that, I want to take the opportunity to say, did you know? And one of the things I want to mention is, did you know about 988? And why am I tying this right now to this statement is because, as Anthony mentioned, social workers, 988 as an instrument, as a tool, is like 911, but it's the new 3-digit number to replace the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, and it's for crisis as well. And where this ties to social workers is that there is, if you make the call, or if you push the number 988, you get a certified crisis counselor taking your call, hopefully de-escalating the situation. If not, a team is to respond. On that team is a social worker. So I wanted to mention that because I didn't want to lose that, because the power of NASW in terms of that triage model is very important. Thank you. So now to your question. I apologize.
No, all good. The question is, how are AI, digital platforms, and virtual tools currently being used in mental health care?
they're being used in a variety of ways. So let me give a couple of perspectives around AI and technology. The first is that technologies, whether we're talking about AI or other technologies, are not inherently good or bad when it comes to our mental health. But it is true also that there are some real problems and risks with the deployment of AI, but there are also some opportunities. So I think it's important to think about both of those perspectives. So let me start on the risk side. So we know that, for example, the way social media is used, they are actually built on algorithms that keep people engaged. And that can be problematic for a couple of reasons. One of them is that some of the content that is coming through those algorithms is not very helpful. So a lot of body image kinds of problems happen, especially with adolescent girls, where people are getting images, young people are getting images that are not realistic. They're making judgments about their own physical appearance that's leading to mental health challenges. But it's also true that that constant engagement is also, for particularly young people, keeping young people from doing the other things that they need to do for good social and cognitive development. So there are things that we've documented that are really problematic for the use of the technology. And one of the things that we're doing as a mental health field is identifying those things and talking to both legislators and the tech companies about these are the things that we believe need to be changed. On the other hand, if you think about that pyramid, everyone in here is somewhere in that pyramid, right? And one question would be, where am I? You know, where are you in that pyramid? Are you at the top? Are you in the middle? Or are you somewhere at the bottom? If you think about how technologies can be used across that continuum. So, and I will tell you out front, cut to the chase, many of the technologies are not ready for prime time when it comes to people who have a diagnosable condition. Some of the chatbots that are coming out actually do the things that are counterproductive to good therapy. For example, some of you may be familiar with some of the cases where people have engaged with chatbots that purport to be a human therapist, and that has led to people killing themselves, dying by suicide. And that there have been a few cases like that. So why is that? It's because the algorithms that are designed to keep people engaged are antithetical to what a real therapist would do. If a real therapist is hearing someone say, well, you know, my parents are really bad and they're all over my back, and I really need to get away. What the algorithm will do is say, yeah, you know, parents can be really difficult because they're trying to keep the person engaged, and reinforce the ideas that the person is, the particularly young people are saying. That would never happen with a real therapist. They would challenge some of those ideas. And so you have a technology that is built on certain kinds of algorithms that are antithetical to what a real clinician would do. And so at the top part of the pyramid, if you're looking for using technology to address serious mental health challenges, not ready for prime time. We have not seen anything that indicates that that technology is ready. And there are other problems. We don't have time to go through all the challenges. That's one example. The middle part of the pyramid, however, I think there are some real opportunities, because one of the challenges we have is how do we help people to reduce stress? How do we help people to take actions that will actually promote their mental health? And that's one of the areas where technology can be quite helpful. And there are a few of those. You've probably seen some of them advertised on television, where they're helping you to manage stress, or they're helping you to just stop and take a deep breath. That actually has scientific support. Doing those kinds of interventions can be very helpful in reducing stress. And then at the bottom part of the pyramid, if we're looking at things, what we call behavioral activation, just what are the practices and things that we can do to stay healthy, those technologies can be quite helpful and useful. So there are some real opportunities there. There are clearly some areas where we shouldn't be working right now. That technology is going to get better, but it's not ready right now.
Yeah, to the point, Association brings assimilation, and many of us look at this technology and what Dr. Evans is speaking about from the standpoint of feeling really good as you connect with the technology, and then and that association that it builds in terms of the language and the building of the code and the language that's built there. But many times it's not looking at equity. It's not looking at lived experience. It's not there yet. It's not ready for quote unquote prime time. So we're looking at it from the standpoint of how do you get it ready for prime time, and what should it look like at the top of the pyramid? Well, there should be guardrails. There should be some ability to ensure privacy of your data. And there's a couple of other things that we need to do, but that has to be by having that research from lived experience involved in the development of the tools and the technology. So that's something that we're doing, working with a digital research lab that we're partnering with to start having lived experience at the table to talk about their mental condition to help form and frame the work. Now, what's against that is revenue generation. Because many times in this space, what we know is that it's commercialization, it's revenue generation. So developing a tool that has a subset on mental health may be of benefit for an organization. And then again, if you're going to be all in on mental health, the question for many of the companies is how do you generate revenue? Yeah. And that's sometimes the question that doesn't come to us because it is one that they are trying to stand off on, and we want to bring that into the room because it is real.
And so I think that, I want to challenge a little bit what you said, right? Because we talked a lot about the challenges of the technology, but there are some opportunities, right? And so when we think about like utilizing virtual reality for exposure therapy, right? When you look at looking at teaching people deep breathing technologies and meditation through a different type of app, right? We're looking at it across the continuum. And so as we talk about the challenges with the technology, what are some of those opportunities as well?
Well, I think you just said some of them. There's a lot of science. So one of the things, how many of you are working on apps in the mental health space? I think we can see some hands. Wow, okay, good. Quite a few people. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about what we believe needs to happen there. The first thing is to be grounded in science. So you asked about where are some of the opportunities. Now, we have a lot of science about what works and what can really help people, research that has been done over decades. The number one thing that helps us in terms of both our physical health, our mental health, and how we do socially in life is social connection, social support. Got literally hundreds of studies that show that. So any application that has built into it that idea or principle that helps us to connect to other people is going to be something that is probably going to be pretty helpful and impactful. We have therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy that has been, again, demonstrated to work, especially in communities of color, very effective. And so any technology that is based on cognitive behavioral therapy is probably going to be pretty effective. We also know that taking care of our physical health and managing stress is very effective at helping to prevent our mental health challenges. So anything that can help us reduce our stress is going to be helpful. So one of the promises that's kind of interesting is having wearables. So a few years ago, my wife had a back problem. She's there. She's now laughing at me saying, stop talking now. I'm going to talk about her anyway. So she had a back problem and went to the doctor, and, they couldn't find anything. And, you're talking, multiple times. Finally, she went and got a new bed. We got a new bed, got one of those real expensive beds. That didn't stop the problem. She gets an Apple Watch, starts wearing the Apple Watch, and the watch tells her when to stand up. And within a week or so, the back problems go away. And I love that example because some of the things that can help us, are not necessarily these big interventions, but with technology, these technologies can give us real-time feedback that can help us manage our behavior in ways that can be quite powerful. In that case, from a physical health standpoint, it could be the same way from a psychological standpoint. One of the things that I think is really important for stress management, for example, is knowing what your signs are for stress.
Yeah.
So how many of you are aware of when you are stressed, do you know what the signals are for you? So just raise your hands if you, okay, wow, that's good.
That's quite a bit.
So here's the deal. For me, I'm not a cynical person, but when I start getting cynical, I know I'm stressed, right? So all of us probably have that thing. It's like, when I start yelling at my wife or I start yelling at my kids, that's when I know I'm stressed. Well, the more we can be aware of that, and if technologies can help us be aware of some of those things that are signals, those are the kinds of things that can really help us from a mental health standpoint.
Yeah. I would agree, and technology is here to stay. AI is not going anywhere. So this is about augmenting the work and building on it. The demand for mental health care is going up, and the resources are not matching that demand. So we need the tools, we need the instruments. So it's important, and it's a part of that continuum of care. We will never replace and don't want to replace people in this work. This is critically important. Both and can work as long as it's on a continuum of care. And to what Arthur just offered in terms of that middle part of the triangle is very important in terms of access to different tools. To all of you all that are working on mental health apps, kudos to you, because that indicates that you care. Because this work is about caring, and the revenue is later. It's about caring. So it was really good to see all the hands that went up.
Yeah. I think it's one of those times where, this is one of those did you know moments. So the top 5 leading mental health organizations are currently ran by Black people, right? And so shout out to American Psychiatric Association, Marquita Willis, Psychological Association, Dr. Evans, Dan Gillison from NAMI, and then Sean Boyens was the former CEO for the American Counseling Association, and then there's me at the National Association of Social Workers. So one of the things that we get to do is we get to bring and center the lived experience of Black and brown people into the work that we do, right? And so this is how we connect this leadership in the next generation. And so one of the questions that I want to ask you is, how do we ensure mental health technology respects cultural context, privacy, and lived experience in the work that we do?
I would offer to you, we challenge the sector. If you look at the mental health sector, we are the leaders, 3 of the leaders in this sector, and I think it's about leadership, tone, and execution. And we have to challenge the sector. We have to be at the table asking the questions in terms of what, when, where, and why, and how. So I would offer to you that being able to work with you all on this from the standpoint of asking those questions is very important, and make sure that this work is not designed without us, it's designed with us. So these kinds of sessions are very important to keep the conversation going, to get the conversation going, and Arthur and the APA is much further ahead in their maturation on AI than we are. At NAMI. We're in it, but we know we're in it because of the lived experience and where it's going to go. Arthur and APA are further along in their diagnosis of the partnership with AI, but we see it as something that has to be both and. But I think it comes to us asking the questions and having seats at the table in the right forums.
Mm-hmm. We definitely need to have seats at the table, and I think no matter where you're at in your organization, you're in a position to have a voice. And as Barbara Jordan used to say, the former Congresswoman, if you're not invited to the table, I'm probably messing up her thing here, bring your own table. Bring your chair, your folding chair, and make a way at the table. Yep. I think that's really important. And the fact, you mentioned that most of the major mental health organizations in the country right now are run by Black folk. I think that is a really significant point. And one of the things we have to challenge ourselves around is, okay, we're here, but does that matter? Are we going to do the same things that everyone else has always done? Or are we going to use this as an opportunity to make progress on these issues that are often neglected? And I think most of us, I'm a psychologist for over 30 years, but most of my time I was somewhere down in the hierarchy of an organization. I don't care where you're at in your organization, You got a voice. How do you use that voice? Don't wait till I get to be the CEO or the commissioner before I speak out on issues. So I think if all of us, everybody in this room did their part, whatever that part is, that's how we make progress on these issues.
No, and I agree. I think that this is the opportunity, right? You know, a lot of times we hear the conversation, oh, you know, the younger people are the leaders of tomorrow. No, they're the leaders of right now, right? And there's an opportunity for everybody in this room to make sure that as we are designing, thinking about, and developing tools that impact mental health, but also impact the community, you have to be at that table and asking the important questions, because if we're not on the front end of that development, it's usually going to affect us on the back end. And by that time, the development is already out there and gone to do what it's going to do, right? And so the more that we are at the design and development phase, the more we can start to ask these challenging questions about how does this impact the culture? How does this impact people's privacy? What are the lived experience? There's a great example of that right now in PG County, where they're trying to build a data center in PG County, which is 60% black, right? And we all know that the environmental justice and the environmental harms that can be caused to the black community when you're building a data center in their community, right? And so when we think about the decision making of those decisions, like who was in that room when that was made, and how can we then advocate for that to be moved to a different area, right? Because we don't hear a lot of well-affluent communities worried about a data center being put in their backyard. And so we have the opportunity to effectuate change, but also advocate at that same time.
But before you move on from that, you know, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is where we find ourselves on issues like DEI, right? Completely under attack. Now, I believe, I'm going to say something a little
controversial.
Thank you.
You got it.
Couldn't think of the word. Controversial. You know, I think that the reason that DEI was so vulnerable was the way we approached it. We have to have strategies that don't put the work that we're doing at risk. And I think when we build things and we put it over here and we say this is to help a certain group, that puts us at risk. What we got to do is figure out how to deal with these issues in a way. We have to speak the language of the environment that we're in. We got to use that language. We got to use what's important for those environments that we're in, and we got to build stuff in so that you can't attack these issues without attacking the whole, right? So let me give you an example. So in my organization, I purposefully didn't build a whole set of sort of EDI. We have an office like that, but what I did is I said, every person in my organization has to have goals related to equity, right? So if you're the chief publisher, I want to know who's publishing in our journals. If you're the chief science officer, I want to know what are we doing to make sure that the research that is being produced in the country is reflective of the communities. If you're the chief practice person, I want to know what are we doing to reduce disparities and improve overall outcomes. So when you embed in all of the places of an organization, it makes it much more difficult for people to attack it. And I think that we, especially now, that much of the work that we've been doing for many years is under attack, we got to reset, and we got to rethink how we go about making sure that equity does exist and that equity does go forward, and it goes forward in a way that it's not so vulnerable in the future.
And so as you think about equity, right? Because we're thinking about this digital mental health space, and you're thinking about equity. How do we also include ethics, right? And so when we think about that, what ethical concerns arise when using AI and data in mental health interventions?
I think a lot. One of the problems with the chatbots is that they purport to be a human therapist. I mentioned why that is problematic in terms of how the algorithms are built. But the other issue is that if you have a chatbot, an AI chatbot, it doesn't have any ethical obligations. When you go to a therapist, a licensed therapist, whether it's a social worker, psychologist, psychiatrist, wherever they are, they have ethical standards they have to meet. And there are standards for my profession, for your profession, for all of the mental health professions. And as these technologies are being built, it can't be just, what's the algorithm to get a certain response, but what are the ethical constraints that need to be placed on that? And I think we need to make sure that those ethical constraints are there.
Yeah, in our community, there's something that, first of all, the advocacy piece, we also would say NAMI.org/advocacy. And that is work that we would love to have your engagement knocking on the doors and helping to advocate for growth, for change, for evolution. Now, coming to this question here regarding the work, we also experience something often called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. How do those adverse childhood experiences go into the algorithm of a software tool to actually comprehend how you have responded to those adverse childhood experiences and what that looks like in your continuum of care in terms of mental health? These are all, the power is in the question. These are all the questions. These are the questions that have to be asked and answered in developing these tools. And I think that that's very important, that we have the opportunity to ask those questions and say that if you look at the attributes of adverse childhood experiences, what does that look like when it comes down to the development of a software tool? And then what does that look like in that care that is given by that professional in terms of being able to actually assess how those experiences and that trauma, whatever it was, is really affecting your well-being. So I may be going off of topic in terms of what the question was, but I wanted to add to the statement there.
No, I think that's fine, and I think one of the things to also keep in mind is, like, as we're thinking about ethical considerations, we also have to think about the policy aspect, right? And so I do want to highlight, because Dr. Evans has mentioned this a lot, about chatbots purporting as therapists, right? There was a piece of legislation in Illinois that just recently passed that basically banned the use of chatbots pretending to be a therapist, right? And what that does is it creates public trust with who they're talking to and who they're speaking to, but it also creates an opportunity for workforce development, right? I think a lot of times we've heard this conversation that AI is taking over jobs, right? And I think the more that we are looking at the blend between workforce, but also increasing public trust with the use of technologies, we do that through policy. And the more that we can engage in this political space around good regulation, but also making sure that we're putting in ethical safeguards, that's how we can increase the ethical management of the use of these technologies. And so I want to really talk about, when we talk about professional associations, tech companies, and community leaders, how can we work together to better make this synergy around the use of technology in mental health? By all means.
How do we make
how can professional associations, tech companies, and community leaders work together to make a better integration of technology?
I think we have to bring people together. The thing we know is that, technology can be developed, but it really has to have the voice of people with lived experience. That's something that Dan talks about all the time, which is really important. I know that as having been a mental health commissioner, but also the people who normally use or do the work that the technology is trying to do. So I mentioned about the ethical constraints that a therapist, a licensed therapist or a trained therapist would have that are important. You're not going to know that unless you're bringing to the table the people who actually do the work. So I would encourage those who raise their hands that are developing these apps to make sure that you're bringing not only people who have the research and science, the people who are the practitioners, but really importantly, the people who have lived experience, because that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck.
Yeah, and we are partnering with one of the top digital AI labs, research labs at a major university that has been doing this work that is actually looking at the different constraints as well as opportunities, and is very familiar with a lot of the quote-unquote players in the space. So we're working with them from the standpoint of that research and that analysis to look at what are the best practices, what are the guardrails, what should the guardrails be, and making sure that we're looking and vetting the different organizations that are starting to come to us with their with their products. So that's what we're doing to make sure that, nothing about us without us, and knowledge is power.
And so as we get ready to wrap up, I want to ask, and this is a question about leadership, how can mid-level and senior leaders prepare their organizations for digital mental health transformations? And so I have a caveat to that, not only thinking about digital mental health transformation outside of the company, but also making sure that their employees are taken care of and taking care of their mental health inside the company.
Well, I'm a CEO, so I think about these issues from multiple perspectives. I not only thinking about how does our field have an impact on these technologies, but I'm also thinking about the employees that we have. And I think, especially as a CEO, it is really important for anyone has responsibility for a group of people, whether you're a manager or you're a CEO, wherever you are in that technology, that hierarchy, that the mental health of the people that you're working with is extremely important. I think we've seen, I've been in the field for 30-something years. When I came into the field, particularly in our community, these were not conversations we were having. In fact, we were begging people to have these conversations. Now people are having these conversations, and especially there are 2 times in our history where people really understood the importance of the mental health of folks. In the recent history, the first was after 9/11. Everyone understood. If you were around and you're an adult back then, you know that people understood that there was going to be a mental health impact. And the second was COVID. I've spoken to more CEOs and people in the business community since COVID than in my previous entire career. And it's because they know, they're seeing the effects of stress. They're seeing the impact that COVID has had on people's mental health. And so they're much more sensitive to that. So I would say to continue to be very conscious of that because it is a direct connection between that and the productivity of your organization, of your unit, whatever the part of the organization is that you're responsible for. And then to know what the resources are and the strategies are. So if you are in a supervisory position, one of the most important things that you can do as a manager is to make sure that people feel psychologically safe, that you give people psychological control. There are a lot of decisions that I could just make as a CEO that I allow our staff to make because I know that gives them a greater sense of empowerment and control. That's by design. So those kinds of things, and then knowing most people have, especially in your large corporate organization, you have an EAP. I started by talking about the 3 levels of the population in terms of the level of psychological distress that people will have. Well, EAPs are for anyone, regardless of where you're at on that continuum. And so for people who, like yourself, that want to just get checked in, just make sure that I'm doing okay, or someone who's having a very serious problem, doesn't matter. That's an open way that you can get help and talk to someone immediately. So kind of knowing those things, I think, is really important.
Yeah, our strategy in terms of AI is really 3 things. First of all, we want to see AI as a complement, not a threat to our workforce. How do we do that? And we're doing that at the top end of the continuum from the standpoint of what should it look like with our workforce. What are the guardrails, the rules? How do we engage our workforce smartly? And then what kind of training can we provide for them in terms of utilizing AI? So we're in the process of that. The next leg of the stool for us is that, as I mentioned at the opening, we're in 650 communities across the country and offer support groups and programs. And many of those programs before COVID were all done in person. Many of them are now hybrid, and some of them are done totally virtual. How do we bring AI in to complement how we actually deliver the virtual? So that's the second leg of the stool we're looking at. And the third one is our research and really due diligence in terms of AI for the external environment from the standpoint of mental health. So those are the 3 things we're doing. Last thing is, as Arthur mentioned, COVID, for Many of you that navigated COVID, some of you probably graduated without actually walking across a stage, or your family members did. We know that during COVID, there was this, we called it the FUD factor, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. The fear for what the heck we were going through, the uncertainty of when it would end, and the doubt about what is the way forward. Well, what we're seeing now is that same fear, uncertainty, and doubt from the standpoint of where we are socially. So we're examining that and seeing it in real time with our helpline from the standpoint of our helpline year over year. The metric point is about 71 to 74 percentage points in terms of increase of people reaching out looking for resources. So it is real, and we're trying to do what we can in terms of being supportive. So from AI to being real with the communities is what we're all about.
All right, so this conversation really started about technology, mental health, and the next generation of leadership. Rapid fire question, 30 seconds or less. What are your organizations doing right now to enhance mental health and AI? Or technology, rather?
Well, one of the things we're doing is we're putting out advisories about some of the risks and harms. So any of you who are working on these kind of technologies, especially with youth and young people, the American Psychological Association has a health advisory. We lay out, here are the risks for the use of AI and social media, and here are the kinds of things you can do. So that's one of the big things. And then on the other hand, we are looking at tools like digital therapeutics and other tools, and we are actually, we have a badging program that looks at certain criteria and evaluates these technologies to see if they are safe to use and potentially effective for people. So,
okay.
We're using some of our NAMI Next Gen, our young leaders that are really entrenched in AI. It's the technology that they love, it's the technology they know, it's the technology that they grew up on in terms of using tools. So we're using them to help us in terms of our work going forward, and as well as the partnership that we talked about that we have started. And then what we'll be doing is also looking at what does this mean to the 650 organizations out in the field that we're working with.
So I want to thank you both for such an amazing conversation. If I had to give away 4 takeaways, it would be innovation must be human-centered. We have to maintain that human factor in the development of technology and how we use and deploy them. The second one would be leadership is the bridge between technology and impact. The more that we can think about this and the visioning of how technology will be utilized in the mental health space, the more we can make sure that the impact is actually actualized when it comes to the public. The third one would be equity should drive every stage of innovation. The more that we're thinking about equity, the more that we can drive it and implement it in every stage of innovation. And the last one is, again, collaboration across sectors is essential for all this work to think about mental health and how it's integrated in technology and how do we build technology to help people's mental health. And so I want to thank you all for coming out to our session. I want to thank you all for great insights about mental health and technology and leadership, and we'll see you next time.
That was incredible. Thank you to our panelists for that deep dive into mental health, tech, and leadership. Next, we're talking about the intentional power of innovation with Joteka Edie and Tanya Sam. Joteka Edie is the founder and CEO of Full Circle Strategies, where she leads strategic initiatives at the intersection of social impact, innovation, and equity. Known as a problem solver and a change maker, she advises companies and organizations on building inclusive, forward-thinking solutions. Tanya Sam is the co-founder of Elizabeth and Minnie Publishing and a tech entrepreneur focused on empowering underrepresented communities. She combines her background in healthcare and innovation to support emerging founders and amplify diverse voices in business and media. Please welcome them to the stage for Win with Black Women, Lessons in Digital Innovation.
Good afternoon, AfroTech. How are you? women in the audience, how are you? My name is Tanya Sam. I'm thrilled to be here. I have goosebumps seeing this beautiful audience, and of course to have this incredible conversation with Joe Tega. Welcome to AfroTech.
It is so awesome to be here and to be with another beautiful Black sister in tech, and just really to be here at AfroTech. I was telling you backstage that I remember the very first AfroTech. Shout out to anybody who was there in, I believe, 2016. 2016, I think it was about maybe 500 or 600 folks there, and to see where AfroTech has grown, it just makes my heart just burst with all kinds of love and just happiness for our people.
I agree. Well, let's get started. We are in a moment where innovation often feels like it is outpacing our ethics, our community needs, and our desires. And yet leaders like yourself show up, stand us, and tell us that we can create innovation with intention. And that, for me, is what really motivates me and galvanizes all of us to really stick the line and continue doing the work that is so important and impactful for our communities. So you often talk about intentional innovation. Can you define what that means for us and why it's so important for you?
Well, when I think of intention, I think about how are you purposeful? And purpose, I use that word intentionally because I think it has to have purpose. So when we walk with purpose, when we move with purpose, when we build with purpose, it is about something that is greater. It is about something that is larger than the individual. It is about how are we being transformative. And so I believe that technology, I actually believe technology should always have the intention of good. The intention of serving our communities better. And I think the only way that we get there, if we're honest with ourselves about who is in the room developing the technology and ensuring that those that are developing the technology look like the communities that they serve, that there's intentionality about making sure that we're pouring in and not extracting, because often technology is built to extract from our communities, extract our ideas, when in reality it should be something that pours into our community to make our communities stronger, to make our communities better. And so I believe that the more we are intentional about that goal, the better technology and innovation will be for us all.
I mean, this is such a hard question because especially in this audience, you know, oftentimes we feel like we get extracted from our ideas, our culture, you know, and a lot of that innovation happens not with intention, but for attention. And so how do we know the difference? How do we measure this?
I think what's really important, and I think really in this room, and I think I can, the lights are bright, but I see a lot of Black women in this room. Shout out to the 92% that's in the room. What I know is that, you know, I think there's a fine line, right? When there's a lot of technology and innovation, there's a lot of clicks, there's just a lot of, I believe, superfluous things and activity that happens in and around tech. And sometimes it's often for attention. But I think, again, when it goes to, like you said, attention and not the intention. And I think when we scale back and think about what is this really about? What is this really for? How is this better because I have been a part of it? And how is this actually adding to the greater good of the community that I live in or the people that I serve? I think that is only when we're going to achieve the type of tech ecosystem that we all deserve.
And I mean, that I think is the hard thing. You know, we're all technologists or aspiring to be technologists in this room, and I think one of the things with tech is we always talk about scale bigger, grow faster.
Yeah.
You know, what's the bottom line? But there has to be a balance of not just scale, but soul.
Yeah, there has to be. And I think tech or scale without soul, or without conscience, because there's often, technology with no conscience. It's just build, up and to the right. I'm sure many of you in tech companies have always heard about, you want that graph to go up and to the right, but at what cost?
At what cost?
At what cost will it go up and to the right? At what cost do we want to profit? Because sometimes the decision to go slower and better, actually in the greater run of things, is actually better for society as a whole. And I think we have to have conscience to be able to make those strategic and very important decisions.
Well, I want to move into one of the best examples of intentional innovation. And this woman here single-handedly spearheaded almost breaking the internet. If you guys remember back to the election cycle, Win with Black Women. And I know you're all out here supporting, because that is what we do, and I'm so proud of us. But, I was telling Jotega backstage, that felt like, to me, the best example of innovation, because Win with Black Women echoed to me remnants of almost an African drumbeat. It was how we transmitted messages from village to village with music and sound, but now we were using technology, digital innovation. It was exactly that, an African drumbeat in the digital age, calling our sisters, uniting us, telling us to stand up, to rally through emails and text messages. And this is probably the best example of breaking the internet and intentional innovation. And albeit the outcome might not have been what we wanted, but you did that. And so I want you to tell us the story of how it happened, and how we can take that story and do it again and again and again in our communities with intention to change and create the world that we want.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, first of all, the biggest aspect of that story is that it was a collective of very, very, very bold, brilliant Black women who had come together. So people may see me, but Win with Black Women, we are a collective. We are many Black women who pour into volunteer. We're all volunteer at Win with Black Women, so we volunteer our time. And when we started Win with Black Women, it actually started in 2020. How many of you were a part of any Win with Black Women call prior to the big call last year? Let me see your hand. Oh, shout out to the Win with Black Women OGs are in the house. It's so good to see you. And so we had been meeting for more than 4 years, 4.5 years before the big call. And what Win with Black Women, what we started with, I believe, Black women all around the country had the same feeling. We were sick and tired of how they were talking about us. And during the 2020 presidential cycle, every Black woman who was a potential vice presidential candidate, they were having such racist and sexist attacks on each of these women, whether it was Stacey Abrams, whether it was Congresswoman Val Demings, or whether it was at the time Congresswoman Karen Bass, or if it was Ambassador Susan Rice, or Vice President Kamala Harris. All of those women were on the recipient end of racist and sexist attacks. And so I remember picking up the phone and calling a mentor and saying, like, this is a problem. What are y'all gonna do? My mentor was like, well, what are you gonna do?
Wait, hold up. Wait. I love this, because she was like, not what we are gonna do, what are you
gonna do? I'll never forget that. And I remember sitting there. I was in Johnsonville, South Carolina, on my dirt road. Shout out to anybody who grew up on a dirt road. This is in the middle of the pandemic, so I figured the safest place to be was on a dirt road in South Carolina, like to protect myself against COVID. So I was there, and I remembered writing an email. So I picked up my cell phone and I text about 65 people. And because of my experience in life, I had been civil rights advocacy, I had been an executive, a C-suite executive in Silicon Valley, I had worked in entertainment, I'd been in all these spaces, so my network was one that was a vast network. So I wrote to all of these people, not just the usual suspects of those in the political arena. And that night, 90 of us got on the phone. And it ranged from the oldest being our dearly departed Mother Hazel N. Dukes and Dr. Janetta Besh-Cole. They were the two oldest. And the youngest was a 22-year-old college student at Howard University. And so that very first call, and we decided that we were going to pen an open letter And in 48 hours, there had been 2,600 signatures to that. And that was the real launch of Win with Black Women. And we continued. And what we all felt and what I firmly believe is that as Black women, we all are leaders. We all have agency. And no matter where you sit, whatever position you're in, you actually have a contributing power to the collective. Yep. And when we come together, we're absolutely unstoppable. And so that was Win with Black Women. So it was kind of like this underground railroad of Black women. And we have been doing things from, you know, in coalition with other Black women organizations around the confirmation of our first Black woman to sit on the U.S. Supreme Court, our first Black woman, Dr. Lisa Cook, who's on the Federal Reserve Board. We also would gather and show force in moments, for example, when there was the backlash against The Little Mermaid, and for those of you who have been a part of Win with Black Women would remember that we bought out 100 theaters on opening weekend, or we partnered with the WNBA Players Association, which was led by a Black woman, and worked to help to advocate for the release of Brittany Griner. And so that night in July, we had already had a meeting planned. And we met most Sunday nights. And I'll never forget Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, who I love dearly. Anybody who is from Ohio, she is someone that I love dearly. She is my soror. Yes, shout out to all my sorors, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, that's in the house. I love it. Hey, sorors. And so she gets on television, and she says, yes, they make this historic announcement. President Joe Biden says that he is no longer going to seek the Democratic nomination for president. Vice President Kamala Harris signals that she is going to come in. And this was, I think, around 2 o'clock. Ironically, I was back in South Carolina on the porch on this dirt road.
Staying safe from COVID.
No, this is 2024.
Oh, yeah.
I was just visiting my family. And so I remember we were on a text thread. And I think all of us was on a text thread when that was happening, because it was like unbelievable. It was like, whoa. And I think I remember thinking, like, this is a possibility. Like, it's right in front of us.
Yeah.
And Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, I believe she was on MSNBC, and she goes, yep, I'm about to get on a call tonight. There's going to be 30,000 Black women. And her chief of staff calls me, and Todd, he goes, hey, I got to tell you something. Congresswoman said there going to be 30,000 Black women on a call tonight. I was like, really, Todd? She said that? He was like, yeah.
How many people had you had normally on a
like
call?
1,000, because our Zoom account only had 1,000. It was a real, if you ever been on a Win with Black Women call prior to July, it was a real meeting. I mean, it was like a meeting, like you could unmute yourself and come on video and be like, hey, how you doing? It was really like a meeting of Black women. And like we had everybody from, you know, some of the biggest names in this nation that had been on these underground calls. And that night in July, when Todd said that, I just said, oh, it's not a problem. I said, it only holds 1,000, so I'm not really worried. So, but when I went to get on my own Zoom, that's what I was like, oh, there's a problem. I can't get on my own Zoom. We tried to call Zoom tech support. We were like, I'm the owner of the Zoom account. I can't get on. Then we said, oh, I had this great idea. I was like, we'll switch to webinar, and then we'll tell everybody to move to this new line. The minute we set it to a webinar with 3,000, it went filled. It was like, I think maybe it's more than, maybe a lot of people that want to get on this. And then what we soon found out was that there were hundreds of thousands of people that had felt the need to be in community that night. And so what I think is the most beautiful part, you talk about the African drum, I think it's important to really pay homage to Black women and what we do in these moments, is because our call started at 8:30. And so we are on this webinar, and we're like trying to get like members of Congress are calling in, and we're just trying to get them backstage, because now if you've ever done a Zoom and you're on webinar, now you got to put people backstage. And so we were trying to do that, and there was a Black woman. Her name is Artis Hampshire Cohen, and she picks up the phone. No one asked her to do it. She just did what she felt that she needed to do as a Black woman, and she calls the COO of Zoom, who is on vacation, and answers the phone at God knows what hour it is, and she says, I'm on the Zoom and we need to open it up. And so in real time, the engineers at Zoom went into our Zoom account and opened up the Zoom. And that is how we went from 3,000 to 44,000. But the reality is that this happened around 10:30, so we were 2 hours in.
Yep.
And by that time, there were 30,000 people in Clubhouse. There were people on free conference call lines. There were people on Zoom of Zooms. I remember someone said, yeah, I was on a friend. She had a Zoom, and she put her phone to the computer so that we could watch it. But what was happening was community, and it was a powerful moment that no matter the result of the election, no one could ever take that away from us. No one could ever take away the power that we yielded as Black women, set an example. As Black women, and thank you to Star Jones, who had the foresight to say, I'm gonna get a donation link. And we got a donation link, and we laid that donation link down, and we raised $1.5 million in 100 minutes. And that really was, I think, a very power-shifting moment, because what it did is it showed Black women the power of our unity, because what we knew in that moment, we knew we wanted to be together.
Yeah.
We knew that we wanted information, and we knew that we were ready to get to work. And I think that was what was so powerful. We didn't hang up until 1 a.m.
I mean, just the scale of it alone. And one thing I want everyone to understand is, even though you had a Rolodex of folks that you could call to start and galvanize this movement, it was all of us, right? So it wasn't just one of those things where you took this power of technology because you knew people. That helps, absolutely. Someone there took the initiative to call the Zoom COO, but also, like, we all use that tech to send out that drumbeat.
Oh, yes.
And
it was the text messaging. Like, I don't know. How many of you raise your hand? I'm just very curious. How many of you got, like, more than 3 text messages about that call? Yeah. And I think that's the power of technology. That's the power of community, because we all were just getting I was getting text messages from people saying, hey, you need to get on this call. And I was like, where you been for the last 4.5 years? Like, of course I'm gonna be on this call. But it was just a real, I think, testament to community. And when I'll never forget, I get teary-eyed when I think about it.
You should.
I'll never forget the feeling that I had when I had to hit. I had the task of hitting end meeting for all. And that was probably one of the hardest moments in my Win with Black Women journey, was hitting end meeting for all, because it felt like a long hug, an embrace, a powerful spiritual moment of Black women saying, we are here, we will not be ignored, this is our moment, this is our time, and we are not going to shrink. And that's what it felt like. And so to hit in meeting for all felt like I was disbanding this hug, this embrace, like you said, this African drum that we created. And what we created, it inspired so many others. And so there was just a seed, and shout out to all of the Black men and any of the Black men in here that was on that call, but all of the Black men that got together on the very next day.
Yes, and did their own call.
And they did their own call, 55,000 of them. And then there was a cascade of calls that took place from white men to Southeast Asian women to the Star Trekkies, the nerds, the train lovers, the cat ladies, the
There was
Swift
everything, and I loved that. Yes, there was a place for everything, everyone and everything in that. So as we've sort of moved forward, Win with Black Women is alive and well. You continue to work, span your work from corporations to grassroots organizations. But when you look back at that experience, how can we as women continue to leverage technology in these platforms for other greater goods, whether it's social justice, whether it's a GoFundMe in our communities. How do we continue the work, on a smaller level, but also we'll talk as we go through to our larger leadership roles in corporations as well.
I think that the first thing is we have to get out of our own way. I was in my own way when I was recruited from the NAACP to go into Silicon Valley. And we often will try to figure out the perfect, and we just need to just step in and do it. When I think about Win with Black Women, like it literally was a email that I wrote on my cell phone to 65 friends. And it literally was just like, hey girl, hey, we need to do something, wanna get on this Zoom. And that's how it started. And I think we should never underestimate our ability to be the pebble that creates what can be a ripple of change. And I think that we often will wait and wait and wait to try to be like, it's just not right, it's just not the right time. It is never gonna be the right time. But it's always the right time.
It's always the right time.
And I think that's the important aspect that I would, particularly for Black women, and I think that I would say for all of the Black women in the audience, is that we have always been the influencer. We have always set and defined culture. Long before there were algorithms, long before all of this was created, we were the trendsetters, and we continue to be. And I think we should never underestimate our ability to influence, underestimate our ability to create change, and I think we should lean in to technology.
Yep.
I think I believe there are people who want us to think that we don't belong in this industry. There is an absolute necessity and need for us in this industry because we're the most educated demographic in this country. We start businesses at faster rates than any other demographic in this country, and we're just smart, and we're talented, and we're hustlers, and we know how to figure it out. That's what Black women have been doing since the dawn of time. And when we keep that mindset and move into innovation, I believe that we are marrying the best of who we are with the technology and innovation that will only allow us to amplify and really be a force multiplier.
One thing I like that you said there is we have to get out of our own way.
Yes.
And especially I think as women or just as entrepreneurs, oftentimes I love this adage of like done is better than perfect. We think we need the perfect MVP, we need to go and build it out, test it. And what you did, and to have the impact it did, it was emails, it was Zooms. So sometimes the back end never looks as pretty as your outward facing UI, but you just gotta keep hammering away at it and see the progress that it makes.
We didn't even have webinar when we started the call. And by the end, we had 44,000 on Zoom and another 100,000 people watching that Zoom.
Tell the story that you told me backstage about how this actually changed how Zoom's product line came out.
That was a part I have been in, most people know me for my advocacy work. They know me for Women with Black Women. Probably in this room, a lot of people probably know I was a C-suite executive in Silicon Valley. I'm an avid investor across a number of funds and companies. But the techie in me, when I got, someone called me and it was like, hey, you should know this is about to happen, that Zoom actually as a result of what Black women, all of you, raise your hand if you were part of that call. Raise it high, raise it high. What you did, Zoom changed their entire platform to be able to hold 1 million people on a single call. And that was a result of Black women, all of you. And that was something that was very, for me, it's just to know that an entire technology company would see the value and the change, but really it was Black women who were saying that we're gonna be seen. There's Black women saying that we will not shrink and that this is our moment, and what it has resulted in is something that I am always very proud of.
Fantastic. Well, you talked a little bit about your career trajectory. It's been very, very broad. You've gone from creating bridges from boardrooms to tech companies to also grassroots organizations. What does inclusive and innovative leadership look like in this day and age?
I think inclusive leadership is deep listening, is deep understanding. I think inclusive leadership really is about leading in a manner that the people that you are, quote, leading, that you're learning from, that you're creating space for others and platforms for others. Like, how can you be a vessel? One of my mentors, she often says, lift as you climb. And I think that's a very important notion for us to always think about. How do we lift as we climb? How, when we walk into a door, that we ensure that not only are we removing the hinges from the door, that we're just tearing it down so that the next person that could go into that room, that they have more ease in being in that room, and that they also don't experience all of the negative that you experience, that it's better for them. And so I think when we are intentional about inclusivity in our leadership, it is really about making sure that we are creating space for others to elevate, and that to me is the ability to lead in a way that just allows you to think about something that is much greater than you, and something that is always transformative.
You know, this is also such a hard thing, because I think, you know, in this room too, we've got people who have 40 years of experience and have clawed their way to the top, and we have people who are just entering. How do you operationalize this in big companies? And can you give us an example of companies that you've seen who have done it really well? I'm sure there's tons of examples of companies that have not. Some of you are at them and you're here looking for encouraging words, but what are the ones that are doing it right, and what have they done differently that you've seen?
You know, I think there are a number of companies that get it right in terms of and it really starts with, how do you foster community? How do you foster inclusivity? How is it that when someone walks into a company, that they feel seen and heard, that they are valued? How, when you look at a company, that company from the top all the way to entry is reflective of our country. And that's very important. Companies that actually have a mandate around creating a level of impact. I won't name any specific company, but I will talk about. I'm an LP in K4 Capital, which is it is a venture fund that really focuses on impact. And so I use them as an example because many of the companies in K4's impact are seeking to solve a problem, to close a gap. Many of the founders that come from communities that have been overlooked, and they're seeking to solve problems. And I think about companies in that portfolio. I think about the mindset of when you are at the ground level and companies are intentional from the beginning. And I think the companies that get it right are companies that from the very beginning, they're not trying to bake it in after they're 5 years in or 10 years in, and they're trying to reverse engineer it. These are companies that from the very beginning, they're saying we're gonna have values that are reflective of the world that we live in. We're gonna be inclusive, that we're gonna be intentional about, as we build our board, we're gonna be intentional about our cap table and about our investors. We're gonna be intentional about our management team. And it does not ever mean, and what drives me insane is that when people feel that inclusivity and intentionality around impact has anything to do with like taking away from the goals of the company, they make companies better. Companies are statistically better as a result of the inclusivity. Companies that drive greater impact and where employees feel good about the work have a better work ethic, which has a better work product, which again benefits the business. And so I think that CEOs have to be invested in this mindset, and I think the more that we are intentional about it from the ground level, the better companies that we'll see.
Okay, so this is not a hot seat question, but at a conference like AfroTech, I've had people who would message, they'll be like, my company doesn't have it in their budget this year to come to AfroTech. Should we feel like that is them stepping away from innovation, or diversity, or espousing the values that we want, or is this just a sign of we just don't have the budget. Like, how do we wrap our heads around both of those things where two things could be true at one time?
I was just getting ready to say that. So two things can be true. It's a very tough market right now. And there are some companies that do not have budget. They're making hard choices and hard cuts. Now, if that same company goes and have an all-hands pizza party and it's, they rented a boat and everybody went on the boat. I've been in tech.
No, they got a company party and Coldplay shows up.
If the company is able to do that and they cannot find the there's levels to it, right? And I think it's important to pay attention. But I also do not believe that we as Black folks, particularly in companies, should be the ones that have to bear the burden of having to convince a company why it's important to be at AfroTech. I think there's onus on leadership, there's an onus on the company to see the value of AfroTech. And so I think some companies are making very tough decisions in this economic market, I believe largely driven by the problematic administration that we have in office. But there are companies that are intentionally feeling that they can shy away from initiatives around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We should always say it. And that these companies, we should hold them accountable. And I think the work of great advocates that are holding companies accountable, that are shying away, I think that is helpful. But I think also inside these companies' leadership and management should really, you have to speak truth to power. And I remember when I sat on the management team and on the executive team of a financial technology company that I was a part of, there were things that I was seeing that I did not think benefited our community. And I would speak truth to power to the dismay of some of the other leaders. But there is an accountability, I believe, when we have access to these rooms to speak truth to power, even if it's uncomfortable.
So from truth to power, bringing us back to technology and sort of with the lens of, again, what the future will hold, right? So we've got so much innovation happening, but we're trying to be intentional with how we create it in our workplaces, but also how we can use it for social good. Let's talk a little bit about the future right now, because we'd be remiss if we did not bring in conversations on AI, social good, and how that looks as we build out, company landscapes. Talk about what you think the future is going to look like as we start creating digital innovation, some of the trends that are exciting you. We talked a little bit about this backstage, but what's getting you excited right now?
I'm very excited about AI. I also have lots of concerns about AI because I believe data is always king and queen. And so we as a community, I think we have to be mindful of data, our own data, how data is controlled, mis and disinformation. But I believe that AI is the absolute future. I believe everybody in this room within the last week have used some form of AI, or you have interfaced with some form of AI. I asked my amazing team member, Jasmine, who's here, as I was coming in, I was just doing some research. And one study showed that there were 250,000 AI jobs created in 2025 alone. That there's some type of AI interface, that we know that AI has right now, I think some estimates of a $750 billion market cap. So it is an industry that is a multiples of $1 billion industry. There are jobs, every job will interface with AI in the future. And I think it is absolutely imperative for us to lean into AI while holding it accountable. I think two things can be true at the same time. That we have to engage, we have to learn, because what is going to happen, and I was sharing this with Roland Martin just before I came in here, is that there is a fast-moving train, and it is called AI. And either we're going to be on the train or the train is going to run over us. And I think that that's the harsh reality. And there is going to be when you think about history and you think about the moments where there have been sort of great divides, the Iron Age, the digital age, that created really great divides in our country. And I believe that AI will be the next greatest divide that is created. And it is my hope that we are not left behind. We cannot be left behind. And so we have to teach our children about AI, that we have to utilize these AI tools while being careful and very intentional about our data, about what's going in there. I think we have to do all of those things. And I think it's wonderful when you think about, like the K-Port Center, or you think about organizations like the NAACP or organizations like the Lawyers Committee that are really looking at how there's policy that's created that creates guardrails around AI, but we should not ignore it. Ignoring it, I believe, would be the detriment of the future of our livelihood as a people.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm sure you guys are going to hear this. There will be so many talks all week about AI, but just also we have to be the ones that are also making the inputs, right? Be owning what goes into it. And, one of the sayings that we always talk about in the AI, garbage in is garbage out. And if we are not the ones creating our narratives, creating the inputs that are specific to us, like, we sort of get lost in that. So I appreciate that, and I think that is going to be one of the biggest pieces that will really push through as we talk about innovation in the digital world as well. Now, as we go through this, I want to talk about some of your non-negotiables, right? We've talked about equity.
Yes.
We've talked about how we bring sort of innovation into the corporate world, into the boardrooms, into, everything from the NAACP. Tell us about, from your perspective and experience, what are some of the non-negotiables that we need to see as we're building intentional innovation?
Oh, I think one big non-negotiable for me is values. And I think that is something that we can never negotiate. Like, we cannot ever go in and sell ourselves short of what we deserve as a people, what our communities deserve. I think we have to always go in and just say, look, this is not negotiable. Like, the livelihood or the welfare, the safety of our communities, they can't be negotiated off the table. And I think it gets dangerous when we start to negotiate or chip away with the values of and the safety and the integrity of the communities that any type of technology or innovation is seeking to touch.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a couple questions as we wrap this up. You had such an incredible, galvanizing movement with Win with Black Women. How do folks sustain the momentum? After you've launched it, what's beyond the hashtag for your organization? And how do those of us in the audience who are trying to create such a viral effect in our own companies, whether it's marketing, whether it's your own business, how do we sustain the momentum moving forward?
I think the most important part, like Win with Black Women, we're very core on 3 goals. Speaking out against racism and sexism against Black women, no matter where it happens, whether she's in the political realm or entertainment or in sports. 2, working in our individual capacity to elect Black women up and down the ballot. And 3, working to lift up the collective power and image of Black women, and particularly that of Black women-led and centered organizations. And that has always been our core. That is what we say at the beginning of almost every meeting that we have ever had, which takes place almost every Sunday. We've now moved to every other Sunday. But that has always been our core. And what I believe sustains Win with Black Women is really the heart. It's the heart of what we do. It's not, we've done a lot of great things. In the 2024 election cycle alone, and thanks to Rachel Norlander, and who led all of our media engagement, that if the earned media, I looked at a chart that the media firm had gave us, and largely most of Win with Black Women's media was just incoming. It was like a water hose. And then I looked at a snapshot, and I had saw that Win with Black Women and Black women, like Win with Black Women, had been mentioned on every continent, every single continent. And I was like, wait, this is like Sri Lanka and like all of these places, Vietnam and Australia and New Zealand and Bolivia and all of these countries. And I just was blown away with the impact and the power that Black women had around the world. And I looked at more statistics that if we had paid for all of the mentions, all of the in advertising, it was at the value of $1 billion of what took place. And all of those statistics are true, but what sustained us was the heart. It was the connection. It was the belief in ourselves. It was the community. That's what sustains us. That's what continues to sustain us. That's why Black women still, we had, I think, 2,100 Black women on our call last Sunday. And so we continue to have Black women that are gathering because, one, we need each other.
Yes.
Two, we recognize that when we come together, there is an innate power. And that's not just Black women. I think that's Black people. I think that's the power of AfroTech. AfroTech in 2016, I believe there was maybe 600 people there. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. And I walk in here and I see over 30,000 of us. That is the power of community. And I think what sustains AfroTech, what sustains Win with Black Women, is this deep desire for us as a people to be together and for us in unity to never shrink.
Ooh, Joteka, thank you. You guys, I don't know, but I am infinitely motivated. We're gonna smile for this throne.
Alrighty.
Get my good side.
I know, get the good side. There's a drone coming around.
We definitely didn't have that at AfroTech 2016.
No.
So look, this is digital innovation at its best. But one of the things that I think really resonated with me as you talk about this is, you know, your mentor saying, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
And as we close out this session, I want us all to know that what you're gonna do has impact, whatever you are building, whatever you are creating, whether it's in tech or it's tech adjacent, know that you can reach millions.
Absolutely. I think the last thing that I will say, you know, I grew up in South Carolina on a dirt road, Johnsonville, South Carolina. Shout out, anybody here from South Carolina? Oh my goodness, South Carolina is in the house. And I gotta give a big shout out to the University of South Carolina Gamecocks if they're in, yes, and their Gamecocks are in the house. But I grew up in South Carolina, and I grew up on a dirt road. I grew up in a town with 1,400 people. So sometimes I look back on my own life, and I think, my God, like, look at where I have come from. And I think for any of you that are sitting in this audience that one day you want to be on this stage, you have the company that you want to build, what I will say to you is never underestimate your ability to step into your greatness. I often, when I'm speaking, I tell the story of the African bamboo tree. And the African bamboo tree, I think what is fascinating about this bamboo tree is that it stays dormant for 5 years. For 5 years, the African bamboo tree, you water it, you nourish it, you do all these things, and it does not grow. But what is happening up underground is something that is so powerful. It is building its strength and its roots, and it's just doing something. But to the person that is going to water it every single day, if you have no idea anything about the African bamboo tree, you could get discouraged in year 1, in year 2, year 3, year 4. But in its 5th year, the African bamboo tree in just 6 months grows 90 feet tall.
Yes.
And what I will say to each of you in this room is that we are all African bamboo trees. That you may be in your season of watering, you may be in a season where nothing seems to be moving, where nothing seems to be growing, but what is happening is that you are being strengthened. You are being ready for your great ascent, for whenever you grow that 90 feet. And so that when you do grow that 90 feet, that everything that you needed, that roots, that nourishment, the strength to withstand anything that comes your way, that you're ready for. And so I think it's just important for us to recognize that somebody's going to try to tell you that you do not belong. Never, ever allow a world or systems that were not built with you in mind to validate who you are. Know whom you are and whose you are, and that you are built for greatness, and that you too will be like the African bamboo tree. And I can't wait to see us all rise.
Miss Jotega Edie, thank you. Thank you, thank you. AfroTech, this woman is a leader. You are incredible. You know, to paraphrase John Lewis, like, keep moving with good innovation. And thank you so much for your words here. And I feel like a tree.
Oh, I
like
love
a
it.
strong tree. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey.
Good.
Hey y'all, how y'all doing? How's your AfroTech experience been today thus far? Going good? Very popular here. Very popular. What'd y'all do during the break? When we took our lunch, what'd y'all do? Did y'all mix, mingle, network, meet anybody interesting? Thank you for responding, you guys. I really appreciate that. Take a second, turn to somebody next to you, introduce yourself if you don't know them already. Tell them what you do, what you're working on, all the magic that you're creating. Okay, y'all, I have a question for you. Does anybody here like gaming? What games specifically do y'all like? Shout them out. Roblox, Animal Crossing, Tekken 8? Okay. Battlefield 6? Okay, we got lots of gamers in the audience. This next section is gonna be a treat then. If y'all are gamers, you're gonna love this next one. Johanna Ferris is president of Blizzard Entertainment, where she leads the global strategy, development, and publishing of some of the industry's most iconic game universes. She is known for building high-impact teams and driving growth across major entertainment brands. Jayan Lopez is the founder and CEO of Black Girl Gamers, a trailblazing organization advancing diversity and inclusion in gaming through media, events, and industry partnerships. She is an internationally recognized advocate for representation and equity in the digital space. Please welcome Johanna Ferris and Jayan Lopez for the future of gaming. hello. Hi. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah? What's going on? I know you didn't expect this accent. What's going on? Yeah, see, I see it.
I heard some gamers.
Yeah, you heard some
cheering.
gamers.
All 5 of you. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
Definitely. Well, welcome to this talk, joined by Johanna Ferris, president of Blizzard Entertainment. We're going to talk about the future of gaming. Before we get into gaming, though, I want to talk to you about you, and I immediately just want to give you your kudos. Johanna is one of 2 black women leaders in the gaming industry at the top tier. Can we please just give her kudos?